For the response essay, one of the most important elements is that you have a very strong thesis statement. So the first question you might be asking yourself is, what is a thesis statement? It is a complete sentence that expresses your position on a given topic. It narrows down your topic to a specific focus of investigation. It establishes a direction for the entire paper, especially if it consists of subparts. It points forward to the conclusion. One thing that you should always do before turning in a final draft is check your conclusion against your thesis statement. Make sure that your conclusion answers your thesis statement. And finally, a thesis statement is usually stated in your introduction. In most of the papers that you will write in college, your thesis statement will be the last sentence of your introduction. Strong thesis statements take a stand, justify a discussion, express one main idea, and are specific. The next slides are going to go through each of these criteria and give examples. Taking a stand means that your thesis statement should express an opinion. The difficult thing in summary response essays like the one we are working on is that it can be difficult to write a thesis statement that contains an opinion and is not just a fact. So I'm going to give you some examples and some ways to do this. The first thing we're going to do is look at a series of thesis statements, and you can decide which one is better. So this one, according to Michelle Obama, there are some positive and negative things that have happened because of the pandemic and protests. This one does not really take a stand. It's entirely factual. She is saying that there are some positive and negative things that have happened because of the pandemic and protests. No matter what you believe about Michelle Obama's podcast, whether you enjoyed it, whether you agreed with it, anybody who listens to it is going to agree with this because it's a fact. So it does not take a stand, and therefore it is not an effective thesis statement. So this one is a little bit better. Although Michelle Obama acknowledges that these are difficult times, she expresses hope that individuals will persist through these challenges and grow stronger. Somebody else who has listened to this podcast can disagree with this. Somebody can listen to this and they can find evidence in the podcast saying that, no, I don't think Michelle Obama does express hope that people will persist and grow stronger. So this is an opinion. It's an opinion that can be argued with available evidence, but it's still an opinion. And it takes a stand. Therefore, it is an effective thesis statement. Another criteria is that it should justify a discussion. A less nice way to say this is that your thesis statement shouldn't be boring, because your job as a writer is to capture your reader's attention. And nobody wants to read an essay that is going to be boring. So if you look at this first thesis statement here, Michelle Obama claims that many people are experiencing loneliness right now. Well, that's not very interesting. It does not offer any new information. Most people already know this. The discussion is not justified. But if you look at this one, it's a little bit better. Although many people are experiencing loneliness right now, Michelle Obama points out that solitude often leads to necessary changes. Well, this is interesting. Many people might not have thought that being alone or feeling lonely can lead to something positive. Many people might be interested in learning more about this. So this offers new information that might interest readers, and the discussion is justified. This is a big one. And in fact, the main point of this type of assignment, and one reason that I assigned this podcast, is because over and over again in college, you're going to be asked to read very complicated things with many different ideas. And you're going to be asked to come up with one main idea. So you have to look at a lot of information and be able to distill it down to one main idea. And this podcast has a lot of different ideas. So your job in this essay is to compose a thesis statement that really has one main idea. You can have subparts of that main idea, but there really should be one main idea that you're arguing for. So, for example, if you look at this first one, Michelle Obama admits that she has felt depressed, and she says the pandemic makes it difficult to stay healthy. This is not an effective thesis statement because it actually has two main ideas. If you write an essay using this as your thesis statement, you're going to have to argue for two things. And you're going to end up having an essay that is not focused and that feels all over the place. So if you have a thesis statement that only expresses one main idea, the essay is actually easier to write and it's easier to stay focused. Michelle Obama connects her recent feelings of depression with the stress and lifestyle changes caused by the pandemic. Here, this only has one main idea. The only thing you're arguing for in this essay is that Michelle Obama says that her depression was caused from the stress and changes of the pandemic. This is an effective thesis statement because it expresses one main idea. This is another big one. Thesis statements need to be specific. Otherwise, you're going to actually run out of things to write about, because if you take on too much, you feel overwhelmed and there's no way that you're going to be able to argue for it or support it in 2 pages. So if you look at this one, Michelle Obama is a famous person who has made a popular podcast. That is way too broad to be argued with available evidence. It is not an effective thesis statement. If you have this as a thesis statement, you're going to have to write an essay talking about why and how Michelle Obama is famous. And you're going to have to try to prove that her podcast is popular. For one thing, that doesn't fit the assignment. And for another thing, there's no way that you could tackle those issues in a 2-page essay. You need to be more specific. So if you have this one, Michelle Obama has used her fame to create a podcast that helps others find hope and inspiration in a difficult time. It still has some of the same problems as this one, but you can find available evidence in the podcast to support she is helping others find hope and inspiration in a difficult time. You can use her family members as examples. You can use her friend Michelle Norris that she's speaking with as an example. It is more specific and it can be supported with available evidence. So this is a more effective thesis statement. So just to reiterate, a thesis statement is not a question. In general, in academic writing, rhetorical questions should not be used that frequently, but a thesis statement should never be a question. It is not a factual statement. A thesis statement should always be an opinion. It is not a topic sentence. So the topic sentence is in your body paragraphs, and that's where you just tell the reader what the paragraph is going to be about. So you might think that this would be a thesis statement. This paper is about how it rains in Spain. That's not really a thesis statement. You're just telling your reader what the paper is about. So a strong thesis statement addresses the question clearly, makes a claim or presents an argument, is arguable, an opinion. It's in the first paragraph of the essay, usually the last sentence of the introductory paragraph. This can be a good pattern to use if you're having a hard time coming up with a thesis statement. You can have a sentence where you have an independent clause where you're stating a general idea combined with a restricting clause. This is where this idea is qualified, specified, or defined. I'm going to give you 2 examples. Michelle Obama claims that many people are struggling. This is an independent statement and is a generalization. Because the pandemic has worsened racial and economic inequality, this idea is more specific. It is what's called a restricting idea. Here's another example. Michelle Obama admits that many people need help right now. This is an independent clause. It can stand as its own sentence and is also a generalization. And she claims that essential workers, in particular, should receive better treatment. This is a restricting idea. So here you're getting more specific. So let's look at some options and you can decide which one is better. This is the task of this writing assignment. In a thesis-driven essay, summarize and respond to key points made in Michelle Obama's podcast, Protests in the Pandemic. Option A. Michelle Obama discusses the challenges and struggles facing many people right now and talks about her own recent depression. Or option B. Michelle Obama suggests that the best way for those who are struggling to feel better is by exercising regularly and establishing a daily routine. Which one do you think is better? Option A, well, it's not a really bad thesis statement. It's actually a factual statement. It does address the writing prompt, but it's a fact. Michelle Obama does discuss these ideas in the podcast. Anybody who's listened to the podcast would be able to know this. And it's a fact that cannot be argued. So a thesis statement really should be something you can argue for or against. Option B is better because this statement addresses the prompt and presents an opinion that can be argued. Someone else can listen to the podcast and argue that Obama thinks the best way to feel better is something different, say becoming politically engaged or spending time with family. So this phrase, the best way, that's what makes this an opinion. So just to summarize again, a thesis statement is a complete sentence that expresses your position on a given topic. It narrows down your topic to a specific focus of investigation. It establishes a direction for the entire paper, especially if it consists of subparts. It points forward to the conclusion, and it is usually stated in your introduction. Here are some questions to ask yourself and the paper that you're looking at in the discussion forum this week. Does it address the topic at hand? Is the thesis a statement, not a question? Is it arguable? Is it specific, and does it express one main idea? Is it a single sentence? What do you expect to read in this paper based on the thesis statement?